Production underwriting for Ruckus has been made possible in part by the generous contributions from Fred and Lou Hartwig and from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon, joined by the Ruckettes. Woody Cozad, who heads the Cozad Company Lobbying Group, Mary O'Halloran, a media and communications consultant, the Ruckettes Emeritus, political consultant Steve Glorioso, and Kansas City Star columnist Steve Rose. The Steves were part of the Ruckus panel when the program premiered in 1995. There they are, ladies and gentlemen. Hardly changed a bit since then. Back in 1995, Steve Rose was writing that funding for Kansas schools was inadequate. And 18 years later, Steve is still writing that. In a recent Sunday column, he notes that the Kansas legislature and the state Supreme Court appear headed for a colossal train wreck. At issue is at what level does school funding meet the constitutional standard of suitable provision for the educational interest of the state? In other words, I think, how much should be spent each year on each student? A lower court ruling that current funding is too low is headed to the state Supreme Court, where Steve believes the ruling will be upheld. In 2005, when the High Court ruled that school funding needed to be hiked by $750 million, the Kansas legislature complied. Is there a reason to think the legislature will be less compliant this time around, Steve Rose?
This, of course, is an entirely different legislature than we had in 2005. In 2005, the legislature was very moderate, and when the Supreme Court threatened to shut down the public schools in Kansas if something wasn't done about school funding, the legislature said, we don't think that's a great idea, and they came up with the $750 million over 3 years, and the matter was settled.
Well, but wait a minute. Now, they weren't real happy about it, as I recall. There were some battles back and forth. The legislature didn't just lie down and play dead.
But the leadership of the legislature at that time was a very moderate, in both the House and the Senate was very moderate, very pro-education, and there wasn't really anything like you've got today. What you've got today in the leadership, both in the House and the Senate in Kansas, are people who are very antagonistic toward funding public schools. And they are not going to lie down when the Supreme Court says, yes, you are going to come up with $400 or $600 million. These guys are going to say no. And it's going to be very interesting because I talked to the expert on this constitutional law at the University of Kansas. He said the legislature is not bound by what the Supreme Court says because the legislature really wasn't a party to the lawsuit. The state of Kansas was. So that's why I say there's going to be a train wreck. The legislature is going to refuse to come up with the money. Then the Supreme Court's going to be in a position of saying, what do they do now to get the money that they think that the students of Kansas deserve?
Well, now the court order in 2005, as you point out, was followed by the legislature. Does that not establish a precedent of some sort?
Well, the reason it was followed was because the Supreme Court threatened the executive branch, said the money shall not be dispersed to the schools and the public schools in Kansas unless the additional funding comes through. And so it was the legislature that buckled under and said, okay, we don't want schools to close. Now, this legislature may say, go ahead and close the schools. We're not coming up with the money.
Well, Steve's right. There's hardly, I mean, one cannot compare the two legislatures. This legislature is dominated by people so extremely far to the right that you really couldn't compare them with that legislature. In addition to that, I think they want the fight. I think they want the impasse. I think they want to be heroes, you know, in the sense.
They talked about a constitutional amendment which would strip the courts of any control of these things.
And Brownback wants to go to battle with the Supreme Court. He wants control of them. He's got control now of the appellate courts.
And some people believe this is the legislature's responsibility and not that of the courts.
Well, not only some people, but the legislature, remember, it's important discussing this, Mike, that the legislature put this burden on themselves. The court ruled not separate from the legislature's policy, but affirming what they themselves had confirmed earlier. So in addition to that, there's a $600 million. The State Board of Education has said they're short $600 million right now.
Does anybody think that you can adequately interpret what provision for a suitable education means
Yes,
in dollars
of
and
course.
cents
That's
terms?
what the legislature studied, and they came up with an actual figure. They did.
I commend to them, instead of going to war with the court or anything like that, I would commend to them that they put on the ballot, the legislature put on the ballot, the same thing that's in the Missouri Constitution, which is you must spend 25% of general revenue on education every year, at least. Now, the fact is we spend about 30, but there's this 25% minimum in there. The courts, we had one of these lawsuits. They wanted $1 billion more. Went to court. Supreme Court said they're spending more than 25%, and that's the end of that. And that solves the problem. You don't have this vague language that invites this kind of trouble. The idea that moderation is the Supreme Court saying we're going to shut down the schools in the state of Kansas, that's not moderate, and the sensible thing to do is find some way to fix this constitutional war forever.
Any chance this might end up in a federal court? Is there a federal case that can be made out of this?
Not that I'm aware of, and not that the constitutional amendment, constitutional lawyer expert thinks. You know, when it really comes down to it, it's just going to be a face-off of colossal. I mean, just absolutely colossal magnitude, because when two parties in two separate branches of the government butt heads like this, and the legislature is saying that the courts don't have the authority to do this, and the courts may in fact not have the authority to do this, you're opening the.
Well, what you had the last time was the legislative and executive both, at the end of the day, were not willing to fight this fight. Today, they may both be willing to fight, so the Supreme Court may be taking on the other two branches of government this time.
In other words, the Supreme Court is saying, spend the money, and the legislature is saying, no, how can you make me spend the money? And that is the interesting question that we'll find the answer to perhaps down the road, but right now we have to move on. But since we're talking about schools, let us take note that a new school year is bringing new developments to the Kansas City, Missouri School District. A recently passed law gives the state authority to take over the district as early as August 28th. What seems more likely, though, is greater involvement by the State Board of Education and Education Commissioner Chris Nicastro. The board and she now have broader authority and could, for example, establish a special commission, merge schools, or even split the district. The principal problem remains the district is still unaccredited. So, Woody, what do you think is going to happen next?
Well, nobody knows, because what the bill did was broaden the authority of the Department of Elementary Secondary Education in both directions. Before they passed this bill, they had to take some drastic action. The school district been unaccredited. If it's been unaccredited for 2 years, then that's a trigger. Now they can do nothing. The bill has allowed them to say, well, we'll just sit back and see if they can get accredited. So the range of options is incredible. They have a broad authority. They can break this district up and move parts of it off into other districts.
And merge it to other districts, right?
That's
merge
right.
it with other districts, regardless of what the other districts want.
Almost anything they want to do. So are they going to take drastic action or not? And here's just to make it more complicated, MSIP 4 and MSIP 5, that's Missouri School Improvement Program 4 and 5, and we are in a shifting from the old one, which was 4, to a new one, which is 5, and it is much more demanding. So to stay accredited or get accredited if you're not under the new MSIP 5 is going to be a lot harder, but they're taking no action based on it until 2015. So they could get provisionally accredited under 4, and then they'd be home free until 2015.
Steve, you've followed Kansas City, Missouri education problems over the years. What would you like to see the state do? Apparently now the state board and Ms. Nicastro will have a great deal of authority and can do pretty much what they want.
I think it's time to rectify the error that Federal Judge Clark made when he ruled on desegregation, the illegal segregation within Kansas City. He was urged by many people, including several of his fellow federal judges, to break up the district and basically merge it with other districts or make one bigger district. Or there were several remedies. I don't think it's fixable, and I think it really does call for an implosion. You know, we almost judge that things are getting better because the school board doesn't have food fights every week and every meeting, and not the disruption and chaos. I don't sense, and I have some family members who have young kids in the school district, it can't be fixed. The culture is so corrupt, and I don't mean that fiscally.
Right.
I just meant it's no good. And it isn't going to get better. You can't make a ship with a hole in it float.
The problems are so immense that if you fix one, you create two more.
And they're endemic, and so I would like to see it split up. You know, we saw a partial split up, and it appears to be going pretty well, and that was taking the eastern part of the district and giving it to the independent school district. And I understand that they're managing education pretty well.
You know, I've been, every time this has come up on this show, and I've been on, I've always said the same thing. I think that the district should be taken out of its misery and split up and sent off to the different suburban districts. Center School District has demographics that aren't that dissimilar from Kansas City, Missouri, and they're doing very well, and the test scores are much higher, and everything seems to be running much smoother. I think if you just for the 15,000 kids that are there, and think of all the attention this is being paid to them and all the bad publicity that the city gets over it, that's not a lot of students to split up and disseminate throughout other districts. And I think that's the only solution, and I think that that's probably what they're going to come up with when they finally come up with their state decision.
I think, yes, I do. I think that before, when we've discussed this, when she came to town, remember when Kirsten DeCastro came to town to fix it, and we said on the show, where's the plan? Is she coming with a plan, or is she coming to hear the people? And she still doesn't have a plan. And I noticed in the article about this that she's putting out a request for proposals around the state for agencies to come up with a fundamental systemic look at the fundamental issues. Starting to sound real bureaucratic.
Coming in on a wing and a prayer, it sounds like.
Yes, and you know, she's going to have lots of meetings.
We seem to have unanimity here because I agree with the two C's. Mary agrees with me.
I do.
I think it's time to just, as you said, put it out of its misery and split this district up among the suburbs.
The children will benefit if they go to better schools, and they're all available.
And then the question is, will the suburban districts want to take them? And there's your six, and some of them will.
I have done some consulting work with the Raytown School District, which has demographics, I mean, very similar also. And they think they can do a good job with a portion as long as the money comes with it. Sure. And they aren't stuck with the kids without the money.
So sum it up, just say no. No more Kansas City, Missouri School District. Move on.
Yes, Nancy.
The Kansas City Star's editorial board writes that St. Louis billionaire Rex Sinkfield is trying to buy the state legislature. By that, it apparently means Sinkfield is helping fund organizations working to encourage lawmakers to override the governor's veto of a tax cut bill. The editorial continues by throwing huge amounts of money into a veto session. Sinkfield may have done his cause more harm than good. Even in Missouri, legislators don't like the appearance of being bought. First question for our consideration, Mary, why shouldn't Sinkfield spend his own money legally to seek what he considers a redress of grievances?
Well, I don't know. You know, plutocrats get to do what plutocrats want to do. Like, I mean, the question for the state here, the question for the people of the state, and the governor has already answered the question for himself, is do you want one billionaire deciding what public policy will be on taxes in the state of Missouri, and whether, sure, it's legal. I mean, he can spend any amount he wants, and he is.
But remember, he was the moving force behind the earnings tax proposal for Kansas City, and he lost that in a big way. And so money is not necessarily the determinant of an outcome of an election.
Mike, you seriously underestimate how much money there is available. $2.4 million, I believe, right now, is the amount that he spent on this issue. 1 point some million for the Grow Missouri is the name of the group, and they're going to spend every amount they can to convince people that the Republicans' idea of blowing a $700 million hole in the budget of in the Treasury of Missouri is a good idea.
But the only argument against him doing it is that people who don't agree with his point of view think he shouldn't be allowed to spend the money to promote the cause.
I don't know anybody that thinks he can spend any amount.
He has the right to spend whatever money he wants to spend, just as the Koch brothers in Kansas have the right to spend whatever they want to spend. The question I have is, where are the people on the other side who have a lot of money, and why aren't they stepping forward to run a counter campaign? You don't hear. It seems like the people who have all the money and can try to control all the politics of a state are the guys that sometimes wear the wrong hats. And it defies explanation as to why other people don't step forward with a lot of money.
They do have, the other side does have the governor, and there is. But I am kind of, you said something about how Rex was trying to buy the legislature.
No, I'm quoting the Kansas City Star saying that.
Okay, but it's obvious he's very good with money. And why he would want to buy something twice is really a mystery to me, because he already owns the General Assembly. But it takes a supermajority to override a veto. And, of course he has the right to do it. What really, this all disturbs me as a Missourian, but what is absolutely sinister is the fact that part of this bill, which obviously the Tea Party legislators never read, eliminates the sales tax break on prescription drugs, which means a lot for seniors and retirees. They say, well, we'll fix it later. Well, I'll love you in the morning, too.
There was a lot of happiness for Republicans when Republicans got a veto-proof majority in the Missouri legislature. Yep. You were quoted in the Kansas City Star as saying there may be a few Republican votes that are now uncertain about this override of the veto.
3 Democrats voted for it, and they've already flipped.
Why would Republicans not support this, the override?
That's a good question, and I can't think of one. Before Rex Sinkfield moved back to Missouri, the GOP was in favor of this kind of tax reform. The Grow Missouri Coalition is made up of entities that have favored this kind of tax reform before anybody knew Rex Sinkfield's name. T.J. Berry, the sponsor of the bill, hadn't even heard of Rex Sinkfield before he got elected and has never received a contribution from him. So this is all trying to get you to not pay any attention to the fact that this is the first time in a century that there's been income tax relief across the board for all Missourians. And they don't want you to think about that. They want, watch over here while we play this thing. The other side has money. The governor's got his $6 million aircraft that he's flying around the state in. Your money is paying for that campaign. And then you've got all the education establishment, and they are communicating with their members and friends at great expense. They're going to spend more money than our side.
Okay, we got to move on, and let me note that you do some work for Rex Sinkfield.
Oh yeah, he's a client of mine.
All right.
And if he owns the legislature, an education reform bill should have passed by now, but we haven't passed a single one.
He doesn't own enough lobbyists to get it done.
That's the rest of it. We've got to hire some more.
Hold on.
All right.
Hold on. Here he comes.
Tell him, give me my name. Will Motown become No Town? One of America's great cities, Detroit, Michigan, is filing for bankruptcy, facing $18 billion in unfunded liabilities, such as union workers' pension plans. Add to that a declining population base, high unemployment, high taxes, and low revenues. Critical mass, the perfect storm. Detroit is a long way from Kansas City, and I don't think anyone believes our local governments are in this kind of trouble right now. But some analysts and commentators warn that Detroit should be seen as a cautionary tale for American cities and America. So what about this, Steve Glorioso?
Well, you're referring to a pretty long analysis comparing Detroit to Kansas City. About the only really danger signal that Kansas City has is they have yet, after 2 years, enacted a pretty decent pension reform bill that was crafted by a Citizens Commission led by Herb Kahn. They're fighting with the unions, and I don't know about fighting, but they can't quite get them all to sign on. Some have. There's one big holdout. And I think if we don't get the pension program under tow pretty quick, we could have a real problem in Kansas City in terms of financing. The city's cut and cut. There's a couple hundred, maybe even more, fewer employees than there were when Kay Barnes was mayor. And so been pretty fiscally responsible all in all. The city is quite large. It's one of the largest geographic cities in the United States. It's a blessing and a curse. You have fewer people maintaining more roads, et cetera. But at the same time, and clearly in Detroit, one of the problems is white flight. The general metropolitan area of Detroit, evidently the income is relatively steady, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't see it as a problem for Kansas City. but you wouldn't want to take the chance by not doing pension
What about the
reform.
$600 million of unfunded liability for pensions at the city of Kansas City, Missouri?
I'm saying it's a problem.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
And you know, I checked with Overland Park, for example, and I know it's not a big city like Kansas City, Missouri, but they don't have a problem because every year the actuary comes in and says, this is the amount of money you need to put in the pot in order to stay solvent.
Right.
And they put the money in and they're paid up. Kansas City, Missouri, you know, the question is why don't they pay into that pot every year the amount that they need in order to keep that pension fund
The better solution
viable?
is to reform the pension, particularly for future employees. There's been that choice: more money into the pension plan or less city services. So they've tried to straddle it, and now they just kind of caught up with them.
Now, Kansas City Star did an editorial saying there's nothing going on in Kansas City, even vaguely similar to what's happening in Detroit. But Tony's Kansas City, popular website, a blog, read by a lot of people, I'm among them. He contends Kansas City could be another Detroit, and he cites these reasons. Kansas City is losing population, it's losing jobs, it has a high murder rate, a growing tax rate, and unstable bond ratings. See any merit in what he's saying?
Well, I mean, a couple of those are borderline true. First
Which
of all,
ones are borderline true?
Well,
Population is
the
increasing.
population's actually increasing a little bit, so that's
Losing
give it to-
jobs? That's true, isn't it? High murder rate?
Well, it depends on what kind of jobs you want
Okay.
to talk about. Here's the best thing Kansas City has going for it. Have a mixed economy. Over the long period of time that Detroit took to die, it was Motor City. We are kind of Motor City, kind of Hallmark cards, kind of engineering firms. We have a very vibrant mixed economy in this metro. But some columnists have pointed out that, you know, if you drew a line around the center of the city in Detroit, the part that's dying and dead now and should be in bankruptcy, that's a good thing to do. But if you drew the larger circle around its suburbs, they're very healthy, as healthy as ours are. They're growing, they're full of people who are middle class and moving up, and it's very much like our area.
Got to wrap this up, but I want to ask Woody, can the Obama administration stay out of Detroit? Is there any way it can resist not trying to do a bailout of some sort?
I think they can't stand to, but I think they're going to have to run from the phrase bailout, which means that whatever they do is going to have to go through various kinds of existing programs, and they're just going to have to shoot a little more money in there and a little more there and get it in there. If they try to pass a bill for Detroit, I don't think it happens.
You do this real briefly, Steve. You're on the Charter Review Commission, and some former mayors are coming forward to testify. And just let me summarize it and tell me if this is right. They're all suggesting a stronger form of mayoral power in Kansas City.
Yes, every one of them.
Not necessarily the strong mayor form, but a stronger mayor form.
At least the ability to hire and fire the manager at will.
Okay. And now it is time for Roast and Toast, where the Rockettes congratulate or flagellate people and events in the news. And we start tonight with Woody.
This is a toast to my fellow Americans of African heritage who were invited in a well-organized and apparently well-funded campaign to take to the streets and call for the federal lynching of George Zimmerman. And they did not bite at the race bait and stayed home in droves. And in so doing, in this divisive era, gave the rest of us a model of restraint and good sense that we'd do well to emulate.
I would like to roast Congressman Kevin Yoder. The people of that part of our metropolitan area have had decades of having a moderate congressman or person in both parties. There's a couple of Republicans, a Democrat. Yoder is what we call in politics slick. He talks the talk, he talks in moderate tones, but he is a Tea Party congressman. Almost every vote he makes is with the Tea Party caucus, but he comes back here, I listen to him on TV, watch him, etc. You'd think he was a moderate, and he's not. And the latest was when he's willing to engage in a scheme to take billions of dollars in food stamps from seniors and kids, and he is giving it to corporate welfare, to corporate farms all over America. He's a fraud.
There you go. The president was in town yesterday speaking about the importance of supporting the middle class and designing public policies that do just that. So the reason I'm supporting what he says and not Representative Steve King of Iowa, the president gave all the reasons why immigration reform is important to our economy. Steve King says, no, we ought not to do that because guess what? Some of these people coming across the border have calves the size of cantaloupes for dragging their 75 pounds of marijuana across the border into this country. They're mules, they're drug mules, and we ought not to pass immigration reform. A new Republican slant on it.
George Costello is the turnaround artist at Union Station who has turned a disaster into something that is very vibrant. Now he's embroiled in a controversy with the Kansas City Museum. We don't have time in Roast and Toast to go through all the details, but I want to say I support George Costello. I've known him for 20 some odd years. I think he's a man of integrity, and I think that he does not deserve the malignment that he's been getting from all over Kansas City for what he's attempting to do with Corinthian Hall.
And finally, the city of Olathe has unveiled its proposed budget plan for the coming fiscal year. There's no tax increase. The emphasis will be on maintaining infrastructure and enhancing public safety. There are no plans for a train or publicly financed hotel. Olathe seems to be focusing on what are called basic city services, the fundamental functions of local government. I ask you, what's wrong with these people? That's Ruckus for this week. Program airs again Sunday morning at 11:30. See you back here next Thursday. Mike Shannon on behalf of the Ruckettes. Thanks for watching and good night.